Now that you all know a little bit about the plan and the process, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee that was formed and tasked with implementing the science side of the process and communicating relevant findings to the executive committee. As I mentioned earlier, the Science and Adaptive Management Plan restructured the program's administrative and scientific roles to function more efficiently, and this schematic on the screen represents that new structure. As you can see, the Science and Adaptive Management Committee plays a central role in guiding the science initiatives, addressing uncertainties, and most importantly, communicating scientific findings to the various other committees within the program. The SAMC, as we like to call it, includes 8 scientists representing different areas of expertise and an ex officio EC representative. So, the 2020 SAMC membership includes the following individuals, and here are their areas of expertise. Mo Hobbs and Thomas Archdeacon are representing aquatic ecology. The selection committee decided that because the Rio Grande silvery minnow issues are so numerous and complex that we really needed two aquatic ecology representatives on the SAMC in order to sort of get a handle on all of those different issues. Dave Moore is going to be representing terrestrial ecology, Megan Conway, ecosystem function, Ryan Grunwald, hydrology, Megan Friggins, climate science, Ari Posner, geomorphology, Era Winter, statistics and modeling, and Alan Hatch is our EC ex officio representative. Now, I don't want you to pigeonhole these folks in their areas of expertise. This is just, we wanted to create a broad spectrum of disciplines in order to draw from on the SAMC. And I've already spoken with all the SAMC members about how they can apply their knowledge across disciplines. And that's really the point of one of the other side of the SAMC, is to let these people participate in a group where they can also learn besides just sharing their expertise. And without further ado, here they are. And I just wanted to share something with you guys. You know, I've been staring at this photo for about 2 weeks now, not noticing that it just makes me happy. Until yesterday when I realized that this is the most smiling faces I've seen in one place in almost a year. So I call it my emotional support photo, and I hope that's not weird. Don't tell anybody. So now I'd like to introduce the SAMC members and let them come up, and all the ones that are in attendance, and do what we're calling a lightning round, in which they can briefly introduce themselves and talk about what they consider to be the biggest challenges within the Middle Rio Grande today. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to the SAMC folks.
Okay, great. So all the SAMC members, I've made you guys co-hosts, so you're able to unmute yourself now. Ryan, I see that you've already unmuted yourself, so you want to start?
Okay, sure. So to introduce myself?
Yes.
So my name is Ryan Grunwald. I'm the planning chief for the Albuquerque District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I've been involved in the collaborative program for many years, first as a hydraulic engineer, which is what my background is, and then in water management as well. And currently I'm the planning chief, and so our environmental resources group, as well as our collaborative program manager, Lynette Deason, are in my branch. Over.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thomas, you want to go next?
Sure. Thomas Archdeacon. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the New Mexico Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office. I do work on multiple projects, but probably 90% of my time is spent on Rio Grande silvery minnow. I started fisheries work in Ohio in 2000, spent a couple years as a contractor for the US EPA. So I've kind of done a lot of fishery surveys all over the US. And I've been with the Fish and Wildlife Service in this office in Albuquerque since 2007.
Great. Dave?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Dave Moore. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Bureau of Reclamation's Technical Service Center in Denver. And I've been working in and around the Middle Rio with birds and their habitat since basically the late 90s. Started as a seasonal tech back in 1997 doing flycatcher surveys. And, you know, bounced around a little bit, did a few different things, but landed back at Reclamation in the early 2000s and have basically been there ever since. And the bulk of my work has been with flycatchers and cuckoos and their habitat along the riparian corridor of the Rio Grande. We cover sites from almost all the way throughout New Mexico, roughly from Taos on down to the Mexican border. So it's a large area we're hitting, and I know we're focused on the Middle Rio here with this group, but I'm happy to be involved, and I think it's a great group of people, and hopefully we can get some really good work done here.
Okay,
We're
great.
supposed to be talking about challenges that we feel are pertinent.
Yeah, but we can cycle back through to that one.
Okay.
We'll just do an introductions first. So Megan Conway's next on my list.
Hi, I'm the riparian and aquatic habitat specialist for the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. I've been in this position just a little over a year. And most of my background's in ecology. I worked back in, I guess I started in 2006, working on the lower Colorado River in Arizona and California, mostly on conservation and management of rare wetland-dependent birds, so rails, grebes, and bitterns. And then I did 5 years as part of a collaborative team working on tidal marsh obligate birds along the Atlantic coast. Mostly focused on lots of trends, getting population estimates, effects of some restoration techniques after Hurricane Sandy, and some evolutionary ecology, looking at how these species could be more resilient for under sea level rise. And yeah, I've enjoyed my work here with the collaborative group, so I'm excited for what's to come.
Great. Megan Friggins.
All right, hello everybody. So I am brand new to this team and I really look forward to learning more and talking with everybody more. So I'm a research ecologist with the Rocky Mountain Research Station. This is part of the Forest Service. I'm located here in Albuquerque. I've worked for the Forest Service on climate change issues since about 2009. And I tend to focus more on wildlife species and those types of topics, but I have worked with ecosystems and some other resources with respect to climate change and fire impacts. Yeah, and I've also had some opportunities to pursue projects along the Rio Grande and in Middle Rio Grande. So it's kind of nice to be able to return to this area because it's been a little while. And so I'll hold off on my issues and how to solve them for the next round, right?
Great. And lastly, but not least, Mo Hobbs.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Debbie. It's good to see you all this morning. It's really nice to see everyone's faces. I'm a water resources scientist at the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority. And as Catherine said, not to pigeonhole, my background was zoology, and for a while I was split between either going with aquatics or small mammals. So I did small mammal population studies years ago and then switched over into water. And I have a master's focus in macroinvertebrates and aquatic ecology. And I've been with the collaborative program for about 4 years now. I've had the opportunity to participate in both field studies and research extending from salvage, reproduction, aging larval fish with otoliths, so kind of all over, and as well as data analysis. So I'm really looking forward to this group, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Mo.
Yeah.
So for this lightning round, we had asked the SAMC members to consider what they thought were the greatest challenges facing the Middle Rio Grande and some thoughts on how how we can address them, particularly in the collaborative program. So does anyone want to start us off?
Sure, I can start. I can take the easy answer and say it's a lack of water. So I did really struggle with saying something more than that. And what I kind of came up with is there's kind of a lack of ability to have long-term planning or to use that water over the long term, both spatially and temporally. So it's hard to, the last 4 years have been a pretty good example where we've had 2 really outstanding runoff years and 2 very poor years. And there's not really any mechanism to borrow water from 1 year to use it in another year. So I think while we're getting pretty good at honing in on what the fish needs, I think it's gonna be a challenge to actually make that happen.
Okay. Thanks, Thomas. Does anyone want to speak on that or jump in with their own challenge?
I can
Yeah,
jump in.
I'd
Oh, go
jump
ahead.
in. Yeah, I was gonna echo that, in that the biggest challenge is the competition for that valuable resource, water, especially given all the existing statutory rules and requirements on it, including the Rio Grande Compact, but also legal and policy constraints of the different resource agencies. You know, my thoughts on how the collaborative program can help. I think one of the biggest benefits has been and continues to be as a forum for discussion and exchange of information between the stakeholders, the agencies, the different disciplines that guide those water management decisions on a day-to-day and year-to-year basis. I think a little bigger picture, maybe longer term, is if we're going to change any of those statutory requirements, it needs to be guided by sound science. You know, these are big things that we're talking about, changing the Rio Grande Compact, or when it comes to my agency, it takes an act of Congress to change some of our policy. And so in order to justify these big decisions, it needs to be based on sound science that the collaborative program can provide.
Okay.
Over.
Thanks, Ryan. Does anyone else want to jump in?
I'll jump in next. Maybe predictably, I think one of the biggest challenges is climate change, and namely this expectation for reduced water in the future. But also some of the changing climate conditions can have direct effects on species, even human behavior. So it's this really pervasive influence, and it's somewhat uncertain when you look at these projections and you see conditions that are outside of what we've seen historically. And so I think that a big benefit of collaborative programs like this one is to get multiple people from different agencies together that are going to maybe formulate, or that are able to formulate, plans that are more flexible and have more contingencies for potential alternative futures, where if you're just working with one agency, even if it's really well versed in science and whatnot, it's harder to translate that to other agencies because they'll use their own jargon and be specific to their mandates. So these collaborative interactions are really critical, I think, for climate change adaptation.
Thanks, Megan.
I can jump in next, and to kind of echo what Megan was saying about getting different agencies together. And so one of the challenges I see in the Middle Rio Grande is that it's such a large system, and you have different species that are endangered. You have from riparian zone to in-stream habitat to monitor. And so a lot of the research, understandably, is done in pieces. And so I think the collaborative program can help by bringing all those different scientists together, the different managers together, and bringing them to the table to make the best recommendations that are also holistic, and understanding one decision, what benefits or consequences that may have, not just for one area, but all areas of the Middle Rio Grande. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to kind of echo what just about everybody else had as kind of a common theme. Working for the Bureau of Reclamation, we always struggle with the balance between the biological world and water deliveries and mandates and, various, pieces of legislation and that kind of thing. And yeah, to me, that's the biggest issue, is just getting everybody together and hopefully responsibly managing the biological world and our imperiled species and habitats, while keeping the various stakeholders happy, the various water users and that kind of thing. I've been with reclamation, in one way or another, more than 20 years. And it's almost a constant theme. We're constantly in discussions as far as how to accomplish that, to do our best biologically. And unfortunately, a lot of times the biological side of things gets kind of the low man on the totem pole status. But thankfully, there is environmental legislation in place, and folks are aware that we need to take care of the whole system, ideally. And so that's one of the things that's been enjoyable to me. One, to work with reclamation, and two, to be involved in groups like this, is because there's a whole lot of people that are very passionate about kind of their individual role in the whole deal, but also being able to hopefully put heads together and come up with solutions that benefit everybody, which is really, really hard a lot of times. So hopefully we can make some progress in that regard.
Okay. And Megan, did you want to jump in here? Megan Conway?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably reiterate what most other folks have said. Basically, key challenges are managing the needs of people and water regulations with the needs of wildlife habitat, and including climate adaptation into our management. And again, I think the key benefits of the collaborative program are vast amount of expertise here in the room and across all the folks who've been working in the system. And even those who've been working in similar systems outside of the Middle Rio Grande, and kind of sharing ideas and expertise, and kind of just putting all of that information in one central location and translating it into something that's accessible to the folks that are needing to make those decisions and make management recommendations.
Great. Does anyone have anything else they want to add about new challenges that haven't already been discussed? Okay. We do have a question from Mike Marcus. He says, Reclamation is about to begin a Middle Rio Grande Basin plan for developing options for future water management. How is the program coordinating with this effort? And Catherine, do you want to address that?
Sure, I'll do my best, and I encourage any of the other SAMC members to chime in if I get anything wrong, because I'm probably the worst person to ask about past efforts or things that are going on outside the program, because my world has literally been right here in the Zoom call for 9 months. But to address your question, Mike, one of the main themes that the SAMC is dealing with, we've already had one meeting, and we're about to meet again next week. One of the main themes is improving communication, not only within the program regarding science, but between the program and outside external conservation efforts, and with agencies that are not currently participating in the program, such as USGS or NOAA or other agencies, and reaching out for help. So we're gonna ask those folks that might have some wisdom to lend to our efforts to come in and talk to us, and we're gonna pick their brains about what they're doing and how this program can interact and interface with what they're doing. And if and that also applies for agencies that are participating in the program. So, and this is what we've found as we're going through and we have these sidebar conversations one-on-one with folks, is that the signatory agencies and their affiliates, they've been doing adaptive management and long-term planning and looking into climate science and all these things for years. And so why wouldn't we tap into those reserves of knowledge and bring all that information in, you know, with their permission, of course. So developing those lines of communication is extremely important. And as we develop these tools, such as the mapper and the adaptive management database, we are going to try to find places in those tools and opportunities with those tools to link to these other external efforts. And anybody who knows a little bit more about the basin-wide plan that Mike is talking about can jump in if you're more familiar with that. Nobody wants to. But thank you for the question. That's great.
Yeah, if there are any other questions for the SAMC members that you would like them to try addressing, please feel free to put those in the chat. I do have one question for you for the SAMC members. We talked about at the last meeting how to move from a species-specific program, specifically species-specific conceptual models, which the program has developed, into something that's more holistic for the entire ecosystem. Do you have any thoughts on how we might move towards that? And secondly, how we might change how we communicate, since that's sort of been the unofficial theme for the year, the importance of the entire ecosystem for species management. I just threw a big one at you, sorry.
I can jump in. I guess I see some of the species being indicators of ecosystem health. So I don't know, they have very specific habitat requirements. So if you can provide those and the populations are doing well, then that's some kind of indication that the system is functioning properly. And I've been a little bit involved with the Conservation Action Plan, which is another kind of regional focused plan that's more ecologically based, and they have kind of a lot of different indicators and objectives to measure that kind of stuff across, you know, vegetation and birds and aquatic species. Some of those might be helpful.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought too, Megan. And so, I've always hated to be kind of pigeonholed as a flycatcher and cuckoo biologist, you know, but it's always been my hope and thought that as long as the riparian forest and the corridor is functioning, then it's probably functioning for all the other unlisted and theoretically, you know, doing better species. That's not even a phrase, but you know what I'm saying. So maybe that would be the technique, is to focus on selecting what we see as maybe, you know, keystone or indicator species, and then, you know, kind of move towards their management. I don't know if flycatchers and cuckoos are, but I've always kind of liked to think they are.
I think that there's other indicators too that you could consider in it. I think the keystone species is really good, but like the presence of invasive species or water quality or ecological flow. I mean, these things that are already, I think, considered, but that's a way to get a bigger picture. And I'm not sure the communication, since I am kind of new, if you're communicating to other members of the collaboration or you just mean all the users of the water, but I would have to get back to you on that part.
Any of you?
I'm always a huge proponent of data and accessibility. So I think I kind of want to say cross-training too. And so, you know, if a manager is making a decision and only getting information from a scientist about, say, the fish, may not understand the consequences to the riparian zone or so. So being able to access knowledge about and easily, so I think that database West is working on is going to be really amazing, but also just having ability to share that knowledge with fellow scientists, I think will be really helpful. So everyone they can always have that in the back of their mind when they're planning or thinking through studies to take a more holistic approach. Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in? Thomas or Ryan? Okay. I have to acknowledge, Dave, your amazing turn of phrase of being the bird biologist that's been pigeonholed.
We love puns. I just wanted to, since I have everyone's attention and we're talking with the SAMC right now, I wanted to bring up a couple of the big picture items that are on the docket for the SAMC as we move into our first season of SAMC work, and just list them out for you. And this is not a comprehensive list. It's just some of the bigger ticket items that we're going to be trying to tackle, and it's substantial. But we're going to be working with the population monitoring work group and their summary report that they're preparing, in taking what they've learned and applying it, and looking at some of the leftover questions, the big things that are still uncertainties out there regarding population monitoring and the Rio Grande silvery minnow. So that's a big one, because that work has to continue. So we'll be focusing on that and forming some technical ad hoc groups to try to get at some of those questions. We've also, in our one-on-ones with the signatories and with the various members of the collaborative program, we've been hearing over and over and over again from different agencies and individuals about the need for guidance on monitoring and sampling design regarding habitat restoration. So being able to demonstrate success in habitat restoration, because everybody's doing it, but we're not quite at the point where we can show success, and that's where the money is. If you can demonstrate that what you're doing is producing results, you will get more contracts and more funding to do more of it, and that's what we'd like to see. So that's one of the big questions is how can we apply all of our scientific knowledge and statistical knowledge to developing designs and monitoring schemes that will help to demonstrate success in this arena. The other thing is putting our cards on the table. We're pretty sure that moving into the next year, we're going to have very little water in the river to work with. So let's get it out there and talk about it. I'm all about elephants in the room and putting them front and center and getting down to business in terms of dealing with those types of things and getting ahead of them. So that's another thing that the SAMC is going to be working with. That's just a couple. There's many more, but what I'd like to do is, while I have everyone here, I'd like to encourage you, if you have items that you'd like to weigh in on, that you'd like to bend the ear of the SAMC members, engage with them, or let them pick your brain and learn from you if you have a background in this and have lots of expertise to provide. Please contact me, and we can work on getting you a time slot on our agenda. Our agenda is pretty packed for our meetings, but we like to keep some time open for folks to come in and engage directly with the SAMC. So if you have anything that you'd like to share, or you'd like to engage in a conversation, we encourage that. That's part of this communication process. So please contact me, and we can get you some agenda time. Thanks, Debbie.
All right. We did have a couple comments come in while you're talking, Catherine. First, from Todd Kaplan. He says it's great that the SAMC members all acknowledge the need for reservoir and dam operational flexibility to meet multiple demands on limited water resources, to suggest that much of the science needed to justify that flexibility already exists. On a similar note, Grace Haggerty also mentions that HR does have a lot of monitoring showing success, and she thinks that communication is what is lacking, so the program will be able to compile the information. So there's a theme there about pulling together information that might already be out there and already exists. Yasmin from Najmi from MRGESCP says, adapting and managing a riparian system through climate change brings a lot of long-term questions about how habitats will change and what is possible and desirable. So just some comments that came in through the chat.